All right. We are on, and it is time to begin, and we are in week 3. A couple short, quick things. Number one, we are, I think, under 25 openings left for Parade of Tables. So, ladies, if you want to come or have somebody that wants to come as well, make sure that that is out, because that is filling up very, very quickly. The other thing, Tuesday, Andrew Hudson was in a car accident. He's got some whiplash and everything, but he's here. He's a little sore, so no big giant hugs for him today or anything like that. But he is here. He's doing okay. Car's totaled, which is no fun. But as he said, I'm healing, the car's not. But that's part of life. So make sure you keep him in your prayers, and we'll have an opening prayer, and we'll get started. Holy God, thank you so much for this day. Thank you for your son who conquered death and gave us hope of resurrection. Just continue to be with Andrew as he heals, and the mics as well. Just be with all of those that need your healing hand and comfort right now. Please bless us this morning. Allow us to be able to grow and to learn. Allow me to speak truth and truth alone, and allow everyone in here and online to have guarded hearts and guarded minds, so that truth and truth alone that they may take with them. Please bless us always and expand our territories and allow us to walk in your grace and your vision, not ours. In Jesus' name, amen. So today, as we go into plot twists and puzzles, how many of us have ever encountered someone, or maybe even had the thought, that Old Testament God and New Testament God don't line up to each other? There's a lot of people that say Old Testament God is angry and maybe genocidal and very, and then New Testament is full of love and grace and mercy and all of those things. Some of us have probably really struggled with that. Others of us probably have never thought about it. And then others of us have probably never struggled with it, but have encountered people that struggle with, man, does the Old Testament and New Testament God, are they even the same? It can be very, very difficult. So today, that's kind of what we're looking at, and we're going to look at this brain games and try to figure out perspective and all of those things. So let's see if we're going to be able to do this without... Oh, we got an advertisement. So I think Trey's going to be able to click that over to YouTube, maybe. He is scrambling because there's a lot going on right now. There we go. I wish you could skip it in PowerPoint, but in a PowerPoint presentation, you can't skip it. At least I can't figure out how to do it. Only Wayne's been able to figure this out to where we don't have to watch those. So here it comes. We'll get it.
Just one sheet gives you a powerful...
Watch the image on your screen closely. We've got a quick question for you about these two squares. True or false? This top one here is a darker gray than the bottom one. Pretty obvious, right? Well, maybe not, because the answer is actually false. Believe it or not, they are exactly the same color. Still don't believe these two squares are the same shade of gray? This man, experimental neuroscientist Bo Lotto, is going to show you why your brain is constantly being fooled by what it sees. We'll take a look at the illusion again. If you want, try holding up one of your hands and block this section of the image. If you're having trouble seeing it, we'll help you out. Crazy, right? Take a look at this object. One glance and you know what it is. But how do you know what it is and where it's positioned in space? Well, let's break it down. The light reflected by this object is converted by your eyes into an electrical signal and is sent down a neurological pathway called the optic nerve to the back of your brain. Starting in this region, called the visual cortex, the image is cross-referenced with memory of past experiences stored throughout your brain as you try to identify the object. Once it's figured out what it is, your brain has to decide how the object is positioned in space, and one of its most reliable tools is to use shadows. Here's another illusion to show you how that works. Take a look at that basketball again. We're going to put it on the court and move it along a diagonal. Now we're going to add a shadow. It's still moving in the same way, right? Okay, so what if we change the position of the shadow? Do you think we can trick your brain into seeing the ball's motion differently? Does it look like the ball is taking off now? Let's tweak the shadow one more time. What's the ball doing now? Looks like it's bouncing, right? In a world with a single light source, your brain has learned to trust shadows as a near foolproof way to know the behavior of objects in space. And in general, it's worked. Until now.
Behind me, there are two shadows that both appear gray because we have two white lights that are facing me. Now, if we replace with a purple filter, let's see what happens to the colors you see. The shadow no longer looks gray, it looks green. So the question is, where is that green light coming from? Well, there is no green light. The shadow's gray, but it looks green. Why? Because of the color that's surrounding it. Context is everything.
Let's start with this illusion. Stare at the X in the middle of the image. Do you see the green dot moving around in a circle? Now try to follow that green dot with your eyes. Nothing there, right? This illusion helps demonstrate how quickly your brain finds motion in your surroundings. Want to see how it does this? As you watch the X, neurons throughout your visual cortex compare the image you're looking at from one moment to the next.
All right, I think that's good. We don't need to
Specific
watch all the
neurons
science
track the-
behind it unless you just really want to. But all of those have much different ways to look. That was a little quiet, so I apologize on that. But on that first one, you had different backgrounds and different cubes or different squares there, and it changes the way the grays look and they line up. And when you actually avoid that separation, you realize, wow, the background changes the perspective. The basketball was always going in the same direction. That direction never changed. But when you change the shadow, it changes the way the basketball is moving in your perception. And finally, on this one, if you stare at that black X in the middle, the space that rotates is always a green flashing circle. But then when you try to find that green flashing circle, it's gone. The same thing with the shadows. It was the purple light created a green shadow. And I love that. I don't know if you caught it or not, but it's like in context is what he said. There is no green light, but because of what happens, it changes everything. So when we start peeling back the layers of New Testament versus Old Testament, it's that context. What lens are we in? Love in the New Testament happens a lot. It will happen anywhere between 106 to 115 times when agape is used. And it's like New American Standard in 1995, from what I was reading in my research this last week, is what popped it to 115. I don't know if they had a different manuscript. I don't know what it was, but that was the one that's kind of the outlier, if I remember correctly. Most of them are 106 times. agape is something, as a church, I remember growing up and listening and talking about and hearing over and over and over again. It's that selfless and unconditional love. It's what Jesus had on the cross. We heard about it, right? Phileo, I remember hearing about phileo quite a bit too, because this is how we should treat our brothers and sisters in Christ a lot of times. It's used 25 times in the New Testament. Affection and friendship. It's not as powerful as agape. At least that's the way that I was always taught, or maybe that was the feeling that I got. It was just not as, there's agape and then phileo is just that step down. It's that brotherly love. So that's the way it was always, that's the way I always understood it. So you have that. That's quite a bit. That's, up to, 140 times? So that's quite a bit. Over and over, it is sprinkled throughout the New Testament. So there's love in the Old Testament. I think that goes without saying. But does anybody even know what the terms for love in the Old Testament are? Do we have any ideas? Maddie's shaking her head no. I have failed as a youth minister. There it is. There's one of them. See, you knew it, Maddie. You knew it. Have some confidence. Good. There's one of them. There's another one. The other one is a hab or a hava, and this happens quite a bit. It's 40 to 40 times in the Bible, depending on your sources. It is used to convey various forms of love, romantic, familial, and divine. The way this one has been described to me is it's very concrete. It is something you see, it's something you taste, it's something you touch. You know it. Right? It's not an abstract feeling, it's not an abstract thought. It is something that you know it's love. You see it. That's the difference. Sometimes in America, a lot of our concepts become very abstract. This is the complete opposite. There's one other one, and it's hesed, or kesed. And there's a couple different ways to pronounce it. The Bible Project, which we're going to watch here pretty quickly, spells it with a K, and I think that's the first time I've actually seen it spelled with a K. That kind of took me aback a little bit. A lot of times it's C-H-E-S-E-D, or the Americanized version, the one that I will say most of the time is hesed. Just really easy and plain. But it is an extremely important concept in the Old Testament that if you don't understand, this is my thought, this is my belief. If you really don't have a little bit of a grasp on what hesed is, it is near impossible to even understand what the Old Testament is talking about at any time.
If you tried to describe what God is like, it could be difficult or daunting. But when the people who wrote the Bible pondered the mystery of God, they consistently describe God's character in this way: compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, overflowing with loyal love and faithfulness. We're going to look at this fourth phrase, loyal love. It translates the Hebrew word chesed, which is hard to translate into any language because it combines the ideas of love, generosity, and enduring commitment all into one. Chesed describes an act of promise-keeping loyalty that is motivated by deep personal care. Like in the story of Ruth. Ruth is a foreigner married to an Israelite man, but tragically, her husband dies along with his brother and his father. All Ruth has left is her widowed mother-in-law, Naomi, who has nothing to give her. Naomi tells Ruth she should go back to her people, but instead, Ruth promises to stay by Naomi's side and take care of her. And as other people watch Ruth keep this promise over time, they call it an act of chesed. Notice that Ruth's chesed is not conditional or based on Naomi's worth. Rather, it's an expression of Ruth's character. She just is a generous and loving person who keeps her word. That's chesed. Now, Ruth's loyal love is truly inspiring, but the one who shows the most enduring chesed in the Bible is God. Like in the story about Jacob, who is a treacherous liar even to his own family. But despite that, God chooses him and repeats the promise he made to Jacob's grandfather, Abraham, that he would have a huge family through whom God would restore his blessing to the nations. And so 20 years later, when Jacob realizes how undeserving he is, he says to God, "I'm not worthy of all the chesed you've shown me." And he's right. But God's chesed was never about Jacob's worth in the first place. It's a display of God's generous loyalty to his promise. God's chesed continues into the story of Jacob's descendants, the Israelites. When they're enslaved by Pharaoh in Egypt, we're told that God remembered his promise to Abraham and Jacob, so God defeats Egypt and raises up Moses to liberate the people and lead them into the promised land. And in the story, this is called an act of chesed, because it was about God keeping his word. Now, on their way to the promised land, the Israelites are scared of the nations around them, and they doubt that God can protect them. So the people threaten to kill Moses and appoint a new leader to take them back to Egypt. God is understandably hurt and angry, but Moses steps in and says, "Forgive the sin of these people because of your great chesed." Notice that Moses asks God to forgive not because the people deserve it, but because it's consistent with God's own character. And God agrees, and he recommits himself to a people that don't want to be committed to him. In the Bible, God is loyal and loving for no other reason than it's just who God is. Of course, he wants his people to respond with chesed in return, but even when they don't, God's chesed remains. The prophet Hosea compared Israel's chesed to a morning mist that's here one moment and gone the next. But God's chesed is enduring. Like in the celebration of Psalm 136 that opens by saying, "Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good," and then 26 times repeats, "His chesed is forever." And so, after centuries of Israel betraying their commitment to God, and after humanity's long history of violence and death, God still kept his promise in a dramatic and drastic way by becoming human and binding himself to us in the person of Jesus. And the people who followed Jesus of Nazareth said that in him they encountered the God of Israel, who is full of loyal love and faithfulness. Jesus is the ultimate loyal and loving human. And in his life, death, and resurrection, God opened up a new future for all of us and for all of creation. And God did this because it's just who God is: generous, loving, and eternally loyal to his promises. And when we experience the purity and power of God's loyal love shown through Jesus, it compels us to reimagine why and how we can show chesed back to God and to the people around us. This is what it means to say that God is overflowing with loyal love.
All right, so that's a basic overview of what Hesed is. It is an unfamiliar concept in the American church for whatever reason. I really don't know why. So let's go back. Let's keep some score here. And in the Old Testament, ahava, which is kind of that second tier love right behind Hesed, it is, but it isn't. That's just the way it kind of lines up in my head. It's 40 times, and there's 39 books in the Old Testament, so that's more than one per book on the ratio scale. Phileo, something that I think probably everybody was pretty familiar with, in the New Testament happens about 25 times. That's less than one a book. Now you've got agape, that'll happen 106 to 115 times for 27 books. I think that's 4.25 times per book is what that ratio is. Does anybody have any guesses on how many times Hesed shows up in the Old Testament? $248. That's over 6 times per book is that ratio, well over 6 times. If that is being used in the Old Testament that many times, and a lot of those times, well over 100 of those times, is in the Psalms, these Israelite people understood who God was first and then applied that to their actions. when we have this dissonance, and I think it's a healthy dissonance to say, oh, if I'm reading through Deuteronomy and then Joshua and Judges and all the thoughts of God saying, wipe these people out. But then you read, John 3:16, for God so loves the world. How does that balance? How does that work out? I think that's a really difficult question to answer if we're being honest.
I'm going to have a thought with that. When you read the Old Testament, God uses the other nations to punish the Israelites for their sin when they turn from Him. And during that, it says, for their sin is not yet full, and then when it is, He used the Israelites to basically turn around and do the same. So
Right.
it wasn't, I don't think that it was necessarily go and wipe these people out. It was used as the same as for sin.
Okay, so let me put that together really quick. So, God used other nations to come in and basically punish the Israelites, discipline them to get them back on track, and then God used the Israelites to do the same things with them. Is kind of what you're saying, correct? Okay, I think that's fair. Except for the fact that He does say wipe out these nations at some points. And so most of, past Joshua and past, maybe in some of what David does, yeah, that's pretty accurate. But these are things that can really trip us up. Who were originally supposed to be the priests of Israel? It was not the Levites. Exodus 19:5. This was shocking to me when it was pointed out to me. Now, if you will listen to me and carefully keep my covenant, you will be my own possession out of all the peoples, although the earth is mine, and you will be my kingdom of priests and my holy nation. He's not talking to the Levites here. He's talking to Israel. The entirety of Israel was supposed to be a kingdom of priests. He does not say, you will be my tribe of priests. The whole Levitical priesthood happens after the golden calf. God loves the world. And He didn't want a single tribe administering to a nation. He wanted a nation administering to the world. That's what He wanted. That's what He craved. And I don't even know, like it says up here, I don't even know if He wanted to obliterate the nations and wipe them out. Because it says just in a couple chapters later, before the golden calf, I'm going to drive them out before you, so you won't even really have battles. I'm not going to commit, I don't want them wiped out. You're going to drive them out, and we're going to establish something beautiful in Canaan and be the light of the world. So think about that for a second. You have a kingdom of slaves that become priests, and these slaves have a law that is the basis for success in every facet of life. Relationship with God. It is a it's a blueprint for success. Relationships with each other. How do you handle issues? It's a blueprint for success there. Finances. It's a blueprint for success. How do you treat other nations? It's there. Everything. How do you make sure you don't have plagues that spread? It's in the old law. It's all there. Now, if you have a kingdom of priests that is very successful in the world's eyes, now you have something that everybody wants a piece of, that wants a part of. And if you have a whole kingdom of priests, they can administer to the world. So that's what the new church has done. That's what we're supposed to do. That's why Mission Sunday is so important, is because we're supposed to be that royal priesthood that goes out and tells everyone. This is the fulfillment of Exodus 19, is the new church. Okay? So the Old Testament warlike God to loving New Testament God is the popular viewpoint. But what does God say about God? What does God say about God? This is after the golden calf in Exodus 34. Exodus 34, verse 6. This is one of those one-on-one times between Moses and God. God comes down in front and kind of just passes by him in a cloud. Verse 5 says, the Lord came down in a cloud and stood with him there and proclaimed his name, Yahweh. Then the Lord passed in front of him and proclaimed, Yahweh, Yahweh is a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger and rich in faithful hesed. Not just love, hesed, grace, mercy, kindness, and truth. Maintaining faithful hesed to 1,000 generations, forgiving wrongdoing, rebellion, and sin. But he will not leave the guilty unpunished, bringing the consequences of the father's wrongdoing on the children and grandchildren to the third and fourth generation. Not only does he use hesed several times there, that gracious God is a word that's, well, we're going into a lot of different languages today. Hanun is the way I pronounce it. It's probably completely wrong on the pronunciation. It's all ancient Israelite and Hebrew to me. But that Hanun is the grace in comparison a mother has with a newborn child. So think about the fourth, fifth time that baby is screaming through the night, and you still get up, and you still love, and you still don't hold that against them because they're a baby. That's the Hanun God is talking about in this situation. Does that line up with a warlike God? He says, this is who I am, full of hesed and full of grace after the golden calf incident. But what is love without justice? How does that work? Not rhetorical. What happens if you love someone, but there's no justice behind it? What happens to you? You get taken advantage of, right? It's like, I love. Why does this keep happening? Because there's nothing on the back end. God is a God of love, and he's a God of justice. There is punishment for wrongdoing. Love without discipline is enablement. And if we love and without justice and we enable, what happens to people that are constantly enabled? They turn against you. Good. Not good. Good answer. What happens if they're constantly enabled without punishment? They keep doing it, right? They don't stop. What's the big deal?
I think character is the main focus in all of this. Our character can change.
Right.
God's character never changes.
Good.
God is. And that is his attributes, all of those things. But our character is either in line with his character or it's out of line with his character. And it's up to us to either change or not change.
Good.
And that's
Right. So it comes back to character. God's character doesn't shift, it doesn't change, but ours does. Nations' characters change. The character of a nation, the values of a nation will change over time. Right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what it does. And God adjusts to that. He doesn't change his character. But if justice needs to happen, he brings justice. If kindness and mercy and grace.
Which is something for us that's hard for us to understand. He still loves them.
Yeah.
But it's
How hard was it, or how hard is it now when you get disciplined to still love that person that's disciplining you? You know, I kind of miss Dave Gustafson sometimes because he would discipline me. And he's like, Matt, that's not, come on, Matt, do better than that. And it was not fun hearing that from Dave. But you know what? Dave was right. So I changed. And so I actually garnered more respect for him and gained more respect and love for Dave because he wasn't afraid to say, Matt, dadgummit, do better. And that's one of those things that's really hard when it comes to love, to understand if I love someone, I should have the strength to help discipline them or shape them and want them to be better. And then if somebody truly loves me, it should be the same thing. I remember coaches always saying, we're only correcting you and yelling at you because we care. And they were right. It was the kids that they stopped coaching and talking to and correcting that they did not care about, and it was apparent. So how does all this work? This is why I was in Bill's class. Leviticus chapter 18. So this is being stolen directly from Bill's Wednesday night class, and part of this, but it will follow up in Numbers 25. 24, do not defile yourselves by any of these practices, for the nations I am driving out before you have defiled themselves by all these things. Again, he's driving out. He is not saying we're going to wipe them all off the face of the earth at this point. This is all of a horrible bunch of different things that they have just talked about right beforehand. The land has become defiled, so I'm punishing it for its sin, and the land will vomit out its inhabitants. But you are to keep my statutes and ordinances. You are not to commit any of these detestable things, not the native or the foreigner who lives among you. For the men who were in the land prior to you have committed all these detestable things, and the land has become defiled. If you defile the land, it will vomit you out as it vomited the nations that were before you. Any person who does any of these detestable practices must be cut off from his people. You must keep my instruction not to do any of the detestable customs that were practiced before you, so that you do not defile yourselves by them. I am Yahweh your God. This is serious. Don't do any of this other stuff. I will cut you off. You will not be a part of this. And in the ancient world, if you don't have a tribe and you're out there by yourself, it's not going to go well for you. It's going to be absolutely horrible. So what happens just a couple short chapters later? They intermarry. I'm in Leviticus. That should be Numbers. Numbers chapter 25. 25:1. While Israel was staying at the acacia grove, the people began to have relations with the women of Moab. The women invited them to the sacrifices for their gods, and the people ate and bowed down and worshiped to their gods. So Israel aligned itself with Baal of Peor, and the Lord's anger burned against Israel. The Lord said to Moses, take all the leaders of the people and execute them in broad daylight before the Lord, so that his burning anger may turn away from Israel. So Moses told Israel's judges to kill each of the men who aligned themselves with Baal of Peor. Baal is one of the gods. Who is another one of the gods? Probably is Chemosh. What kind of sacrifices are they demanding? Does anybody know? What? Infant. Child sacrifice. Killing the baby? Is that, yeah. Killing the babies. And burning them. It's heinous. This is horrible. And are the Israelites good enough to convert the Moabites at this point? Or are they being drugged down? They're being drugged. It is an infection. It is a sickness. And they are not strong enough to resist this because they're marrying the wrong people. They're intermarrying with these people that have opposite values. And so God, loving the world and loving his people, needs to get this gone. It needs to get this away. Because what happens if your priesthood and your kingdom is infected by evil? What good are they? And then this chapter gets very violent. And then Deuteronomy, again in 20 and 16 and 17, says, wipe these people off the face of the earth. It says it in Deuteronomy 7. Joshua, it says it several times, just get them out. Don't make deals with them. Don't talk to them. Don't negotiate. Just go in and wipe them out because they're evil. Because they're despicable. That's why. And their hearts are hard enough, and it doesn't say this that I know of, but this is how I deduct things. This is how I look at it. The inhabitants of Canaan are evil enough that they cannot be converted. At least not by the Israelites. God, I think, still loves those people. But all hope is lost. And that's the problem. So Exodus chapter 34, 6 through 10 is often called the God Creed. And all a creed is a statement of who you are and what you believe. And so God comes down and says, I am a God of Hesed, and grace, but if you cross me, if you do the things I tell you not to, there will be justice and there will be punishment for you and the generations after you. Because sin has consequences. And sin has consequences not just for you, but the people after you. Exodus 19 says everybody should be a royal priesthood. So why the hard turn? Why does it go from we're going to drive them out and leave a candle of hope to wipe them off the face of the planet? With a God full of Hesed and a God full of grace. Why? I think it's because the Israelites could not handle that responsibility. So then that really begs the question of why did God set up this mission for them if he knows everything? Why did he set up a mission for the Israelites for them to fail? To make them get stronger. Good. Good. This is a difficult question, I think. If God knew that they would be wrongly influenced by the Moabites and the Midianites and everyone else, and the Amalekites and all of them, why does he say we're going to drive them out and then we're going to give you your own land instead of at the very beginning just say, we can't handle this, I know you can't handle it, so we're going to wipe everything out in front of you. Good. Good. It goes back, Brad's saying it goes back to enabling. If God just takes care of everything for them, what do they learn? They don't learn anything, right? And did they become strong or did they become weak? I think that's a great point. I think that's spot on. Is saying, well, if everything's taken care of for them, even though so much has been taken care of for them up to this point anyway, it says, what's the value? What's the strength? Are you creating a strong kingdom or a weak kingdom? I like that. I think that has a lot to do with it. How many times have we been in a leadership position and we have assigned a task to someone that we know is too great for them and is too heavy for them? And do we do that for a reason? I think is another way to look at this. So that they can learn to depend on others besides themselves. If you have a task that is too great, it is a great learning experience, even in failure, to say, I need help. Is that a possibility that God's doing? I think so. This is not easy, at least for my generation of millennials, to wrestle through this conundrum. If God is a God full of love and hesed in the New Testament, where's the love in the Old Testament? Well, it's there. It's there. It's there, and it is there so much more than the New Testament. But there's so much more going on, and there's so much more depth. And it is grace and love being acted out, just not in the way that makes us feel warm and fuzzy. Because sometimes maybe we've forgotten what love really is. I think that's it. So that's the hard thing. Sometimes we look at one God in the New Testament, one God in the Old Testament, even as very seasoned Christians, because the background can be shifted on us. Because we're all looking at the reaction of the shadows and what's going on in the background. But really, that's your perception, and that's the lens you're looking through. So make sure you're looking at God as who he is, as a God full of hesed, as a God full of grace and love, but a God that just doesn't put up with anything he shouldn't have to put up with. So thanks a lot, and we'll move on to Mission Sunday. Next week, it'll be Brett McCaslin in here, so we'll have a break.